No one is going to be punished for something they had no control over and did not will. So in the case of someone who, born in original sin, does nothing about it, they have chosen through their inaction or decision not to be baptized, that is punishable. But a person who is incapable of being baptized, for instance, say, lived before the time of Christ, or they're an infant who can't choose baptism for themselves, those kind of cases, there's an incapacity. And so damning people for incapacity wouldn't make the good news good news. So if you think about it this way, all around the world at the time of Jesus, babies were being born right before the time of Christ, during the time of Christ, right after the time of Christ. And in most of those places, neither Judaism nor Christianity were even things people had ever heard of. They were not exposed to divine revelation. If you can imagine, a child who dies in infancy, and then maybe a generation later, their niece or nephew dies in infancy, it wouldn't be the case that, the aunt goes to heaven and the niece goes to hell because the aunt was born before the time of Christ and the niece wasn't, because that would make Christ coming into the world bad news for most of the world until 1492 or until more of the world is discovered. And so that turns the gospel all inside out and upside down. Whenever you read these things, whether it's in scripture or in church documents, they're talking about not intentional ignorance, unless they're explicitly talking about that. So when they say, you have to believe and be baptized, well, a baptized baby maybe doesn't have belief. They have the theological gift of faith, but there's no active, willing of belief in them. So and all those things, understand that Jesus is talking to people who know he's talking to them. He's not talking about people who have no awareness of his existence. Because that principle, we see it reflected, for instance, in John 21. Jesus gives instructions to Peter. Peter wants to know about John, and he just says, what is it to you? Come follow me. The message of Jesus is intended for the reader and the listener. It's not intended to help us speculate better on which people are going to be damned on the other parts of the world that maybe haven't heard the gospel.